Her work took her outside of Mississippi. Less than 9 months after Hamer was hired, she and other members of the Southern Christian Leadership Council and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee were returning by bus from a voter education workshop in Charleston, South Carolina. They were arrested for entering the white side of the terminal and held in jail. White supervisors told a group of black police officers to beat them. At first, the black officers refused, but when they were told they would be fired, they reluctantly did it. Hamer suffered kidney damage and permanently injured her left eye from a blood clot. From her jail cell, Hamer heard white officers plan to murder them. The plan was to let them out of jail and then kill them for trying to escape.
They offered to let us go one night, but I knew it was just so they could kill us and say we was trying to escape. I told them they'd have to kill me in my cell.
I had 2 encounters with Fannie Lou Hamer. One was on the telephone and one was in person. At the time, I was an employee of the Voter Education Project, which was directed by the late Wiley A. Branton. Ms. Hamer and Annelle Ponder, a young civil rights worker, had been taken off of a bus and put in a jail in Mississippi and beaten. And Mr. Branton had been instrumental in getting them released from jail. No doubt he was instrumental in saving their lives, actually. But as soon as they had been released from the jail, Mrs. Hamer called the Voter Education Project in Atlanta. We were at 5 Forsyth Street at the time. And she was still emotionally overwrought from her experience. And she gave us the account of exactly what had happened to her in that jail. And I'm sure that story has been told many times, how 2 black men had been forced to take sticks and beat her and Annelle. And actually it injured her badly because she was a polio victim as a child. And she walked with a limp, and they had beaten her all over her legs. And I remember the most heartrending thing that she said to me over the phone was, "They beat me, and they beat me till they couldn't beat me no more." And it hurt her so badly that these 2 black men had to perform this. But Fannie Lou Hamer was a person who was not afraid to die, even though she underwent some horrendous experiences.
Even though Hamer knew many whites hated black people, she refused to hate them.
It wouldn't solve any problem for me to hate whites just because they hate me.
After movement representatives were notified about what had happened, they contacted the Justice Department. Inquiries by the Justice Department into the circumstances surrounding the arrest led to them being freed after 3 days in jail. After the passage of the 1964 Public Accommodations Law, making it illegal to discriminate against blacks in public places, the momentum grew stronger for the right to vote in Mississippi. Hamer and other leaders in the movement knew that many of the states, towns, and counties had mostly black populations. Winning the right to vote meant electing many black officials who could help the race improve their standard of living. The push for voting rights in Mississippi also drew the attention of thousands of white student volunteers throughout the nation, and they came to help black people in their efforts to register. In August of 1964, 2 white volunteers from the North and a young black from Mississippi were murdered in Neshoba County, Mississippi. In the spring of 1964, Hamer and other people in Mississippi formed the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party after they were barred from Democratic precinct meetings. After Hamer attended a meeting, her husband was fired from his job the next day. Hamer was elected vice chair of the party and was fearless in speaking publicly about black and white relations.
In my opinion, race relations have not improved. Some people, it seems, will never change. One of the best examples of that is the recent killing of Miss Jo Etha Collier by 3 white men following her graduation exercise in Drew, Mississippi. Drew has a long history of mobbing and killing, and the same thing is still happening today. At one time in Mississippi, whites used to kill without bothering to explain. But at this point, in such cases, explanations are given.
In 1964, the MFDP, made up of black and white delegates, went to Atlantic City to attend the Democratic National Convention. They presented their evidence that the white delegation had been selected in a fraudulent method. Hamer's group asked the Convention Credentials Committee to refuse to seat the Democratic delegates and instead recognize the MFDP as representatives from Mississippi. President Lyndon Johnson was unopposed for the Democratic nomination and held a commanding lead over Republican challenger Barry Goldwater. Johnson made careful plans to use this opportunity for national television coverage to enhance his image in the Democratic Party. The MFDP could ruin this. The group was led by famous civil rights attorney Joseph Rao. Martin Luther King Jr. was one of the people who testified before the convention's Credentials Committee, but it was Hamer who shook the conscience of the nation with her moving testimony about the terrible economic conditions blacks were pinned under. Her shocking comments of how she and others were badly beaten for attempting to exercise their legal rights to vote drew national attention.
It is the very terror that these people are living through that is the reason that Negroes aren't voting, that they're kept out of the Democratic Party by the terror of the regular party. And what I want the Credentials Committee to hear is the terror which the regular party uses on the people of Mississippi, which is what Reverend King was explaining, which is what Aaron Henry was explaining, and which is what the next witness will explain, Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer.